So what are the Czechs and Hungarians up to again? Péter Magyar won the election by a landslide, gaining a constitutional majority, and that's in a system that was set up undemocratically to favor Orbán and his party Fidesz. And the reactions didn't take long to follow. Let's take a look at how not only Hungarians are celebrating, but also how politicians from Europe and around the world and Czech politicians are reacting. And we'll kick it off with the most important person, the lawyer. I'll repeat, the lawyer, Jindřich Rajchl. He's a lawyer, you know. And he comments, Péter Magyar has won. We need to congratulate Brussels. Hand in hand with the secret services, they did a great job. I'm convinced that the Hungarians will soon sober up once they try their own version of Péter Fiala. Soon they'll be saying, good old Orbán. Jindřich Rajchl is once again showing complete incompetence here. He's totally, absolutely out of touch. When it comes to intelligence services and the great work in Brussels, it's important to realize that in Budapest, one so-called conservative right-wing politician after another showed up one after another. The motorists and Makinka were there. He was supported by Babiš, supported by Fico, supported by his Republicans and MAGA from the United States. He was even supported by Putin, maybe not very loudly, but the support was there. He was supported from Serbia. The support was enormous. The interference in those Hungarian elections from abroad was gigantic. The support from all sorts of strange people from Europe and around the world was massive for Viktor Orbán. And even though he had the system disgustingly set up for himself, even though he had brutal support and there was brutal interference, he still had it. He absolutely, totally failed. And to call Péter Magyar Péter Fiala, the Hungarian Péter Fiala, that's something that's just completely out of line. Péter Magyar is a right-wing populist conservative, something like Andrej Babiš. That's not Péter Fiala. Not even close. That person is not a professor. That person is not decent. That person is a nationalist. That person is anti-Ukrainian. That person just wants to settle scores and support his own regions, just like Viktor Orbán. The way Jindřich Rajchl frames Péter Magyar is so completely off, just unbelievably so. I don't understand how someone this stupid with zero political insight can be a member of parliament. Who voted for him? Did people as clueless and idiotic as him give him their votes? Probably. How stupid do you have to be to write something like this about Péter Magyar? How can you compare Péter Magyar to Péter Fiala? The only thing they have in common is the name Peter. Unbelievable. And what annoys me here isn't that he's blaming Brussels. Let him blame Brussels. What annoys me is the stupidity. That stupidity is highly frustrating. But now let's take a look at how they welcome their haha Péter Fiala haha in Hungary. Especially in Budapest. The Hungarians are quite excited about it. This is a united nation. This is a nation united around Tisza, around Péter Magyar, celebrating change, celebrating revolution, celebrating new hope. Like, you will never see this in the Czech Republic after elections. You might see something like this if we win the Olympics in hockey, and even then, I don't think so. Yeah. Here is Mr. Trump's statement on the situation. So thank you for the comment. More footage of what's happening in Hungary. They are removing posters of Volodymyr Zelensky here. Ta atmosféra jako je neskutečná. A tady dalších pár obrázků přímo z meetingu povolebního. This is the future Minister of Health, and it's also about the fact that Péter Magyar and his party want to bring back ministries that Orbán abolished, like the Ministry of Education. We can see that there are also flags here with the symbol of Hungary. At the same time, on the other hand, There are also revolutionary flags from 1956. It's a strange mix. On one hand, there's nationalism, the symbol of Hungary, right? And then you have the European Union here. You can really see that Hungarians from different backgrounds are putting their hopes in Péter Magyar, and above all, they wanted Orbán gone. Of course, it's also worth noting that in the past, Orbán has often won, and that a pure anti-Orbán approach hasn't succeeded. So this time, it was a mix of anti-Orbán and pro-Magyar. There's probably a good chance that a lot of people didn't just vote against Orbán, but actually voted for Magyar, which is a big difference. It's also a huge difference compared to what happened here, when people voted against Babiš rather than for Péter Fiala. That's another huge mistake made by Jindřich, Rajchl, and all those people who have absolutely no understanding of Hungarian politics. So now let's take a look at some statements from our politicians who probably have a bit more insight and aren't just completely irrelevant loudmouths. For example, Péter Pavel. I congratulate the winner, Péter Magyar, and his party as well. People wanted change in a European direction. It's good news for Europe. Whether it's good news for Europe remains to be seen, because Péter Magyar will probably want Hungary to be part of Europe, but he won't be servile. As I said, he's a conservative, he's a national socialist, you could say, and he's simply a nationalist. So he will push very strongly for Hungarian national interests. And if people in Europe and Brussels don't want to cooperate, compromise, or tolerate it, it could very quickly happen that the new Hungary with a new leader who has a strong new mandate will start to resist again. So at this moment, the ball is also in Europe's and the European Union's court to welcome Hungary back into their ranks, but with the understanding that Hungarians simply have that anti-Western sentiment, that anti-Ukrainian sentiment, and that strong nationalism in their DNA. That's something we need to recognize, that's something we need to take into account, and if we want them to cooperate with us, then we simply have to adjust our approach to them a bit. Similarly, as it worked out with the Poles, because even though the Poles have Karol Nawrocki, who is an ultra-conservative, their prime minister is Donald Tusk, who is, let's say, relatively liberal by Polish standards. Here we would say he's centrist, sometimes conservative. So even though Poland hasn't changed much since PiS stopped ruling, the fact that it became, let's say, new and fresh made Europe start to approach it a bit differently. They didn't go before, so at this moment, so here, like Péter Pavel, they want to be in Europe, but in their own tím způsobem svojí vlastní cestou. Další vyjádření tady máme od Karla Havlíčka. Gratulace vítězi voleb v Maďarsku k přesvědčivému výsledku. Thanks to the defeated candidate for very good cooperation. 20 years at the head of the state is unprecedented in today's Europe and deserves respect. Above all, it deserves a thumbs up for now, because no one should be at the head of the state or in any high office for so long. 8 years is a long enough time. It shouldn't even be possible to stay longer, because at that point a person starts to get tunnel vision and becomes too intertwined with the state institutions where they shouldn't be. Here you can clearly sense from the ANO movement that they're not happy about it, and they're not happy because Andrej Babiš has certain ties with Orbán. He had certain exceptions, certain privileges, which he could now lose. So there's a question hanging in the air right now about what will happen with Agrofert and Andrej Babiš's companies in Hungary, since other big players in agriculture were often pushed out of Hungary. And Andrej Babiš had a special position there because he had unusually close ties with Viktor Orbán. Another statement is from Martin Kupka. After a period of rapprochement with the Kremlin and controversial steps towards European partners, a time is coming when Hungary will once again strengthen cooperation within Europe. Yes, it was learned here. I can agree with that. Hungary's move away from the Kremlin is something that is highly likely to happen, because even though we can't expect Hungary to suddenly become pro-Ukrainian or outright pro-Western, there will still be that defiance, that resistance, that stubbornness in their DNA. Still, we can expect that they will no longer be calling Moscow to report what was said behind closed doors in Brussels, which is definitely a step forward for the better. So that was the statement from Martin Kupka and Karel Havlicek. We also have a direct statement from Andrej Babiš. Congratulations to Péter Magyar on his election victory. Facing such a strong opponent as Viktor Orbán was never easy. Still, he earned most Hungarians' trust, bringing high hopes and expectations. He must not disappoint. Yes, this is extremely important because Péter Magyar has set huge expectations, and many of those expectations are even contradictory. So in the end, he will disappoint someone, he will definitely disappoint someone, and the question will be whether Hungarians will accept it pragmatically, in the sense that, hey, at least he took down some of those oligarchs, at least he straightened out some of those rights, at least now we're getting that money from Europe. Even though we're not helping Ukraine, which some Hungarians probably voted for Péter Magyar thinking that maybe they would, to begin supporting Ukraine, though they'll think, even if we don't help, at least we're not total fools anymore. So in this regard, Péter Magyar has a lot of promises he's made. He can't and isn't able to keep all of them because, for example, the promise to uphold the constitution or to change it to make it more democratic. Meanwhile, there's also the promise to dismantle the oligarchic national bourgeoisie, who some say gained their wealth this way. Some Hungarians say it was unjustly, and overall to completely overhaul all the systems that exist in the Orbán state. These things will often conflict with each other, so it will disappoint some people. The question is whether Hungarians will accept that this disappointment or the failure to deliver 100% results is simply something that is part of politics, part of normal existence. In the end, Hungarians tend to accept a certain hegemony. Now the question is whether this brutal victory of Péter Magyar over Orbán is the beginning of a new hegemony, or if it's just a pause, whether it's a pause for Viktor Orbán. Because Viktor Orbán has already lost an election once, he took a break, but the person who replaced him totally messed it up. Totally. So right now, Péter Magyar has it in his hands. He has to fight against the Orbán-style state or take it over. Buy it, if I can put it that way. He can keep those Orbán-style structures. He just has to bring them under his own control. And at that moment, he could really get Hungary under control and dominate it. If he manages to do this, I would say we're at the beginning of a new hegemony. He has a constitutional majority, so the way is paved for him. If he doesn't succeed and can't fulfill the promises he made, it's quite possible that in 4 years Orbán will be back, and that wouldn't be pleasant. However, regarding the fact that Andrej Babiš is looking forward to cooperation, I would say that Andrej Babiš will try to have good relations with Péter Magyar and will try to cooperate with Hungary regardless of the fact that Orbán is no longer in power. Firstly, because now there is a greater chance to build a functional V4, since Hungary and Poland currently have politicians, prime ministers, and leaders who understand each other. We are, let's say, a rather adaptable country, and theoretically, with the gravitational pull of those 3 countries that aren't completely up Russia's ass, even Slovakia could be pulled out of Russia's ass. Therefore, the victory of Péter Magyar gives a new, bigger and stronger chance that the V4 will once again be a functional project. It's just that the Slovaks need to change a bit, and I think Andrej Babiš is capable of adapting to the Poles and Hungarians, and it will really just depend on whether we get rid of Fico, and I think we will get rid of him. So effectively, a new hope for the V4. Another statement from Volodymyr Zelensky. Ukraine has always strived for good neighborly relations with everyone in Europe. We are ready for meetings and joint constructive work for the benefit of both nations. We've discussed this, I've said it before. Péter Magyar is a nationalist. Hungarians don't like Ukrainians. Péter Magyar will not support Ukraine, but most likely he will not block any sanction packages against Russia or aid to Ukrainians. But what is important is that he will definitely want some kind of energy security. So in this regard, concerning gas, oil, and so on, we can expect that he will support and continue in Orban's footsteps, while of course there is the Orbanist mold there, and that will also need to be de-Orbanized and Magyarized. Then we have a statement from Robert Fico. I am ready for intensive cooperation with the new Hungarian Prime Minister, whom I congratulate on his election result. I believe Slovakia, Hungary, and all of Central Europe still have a strong interest in restoring the Druzhba pipeline's operation. So here, Robert Fico will, of course, try to fulfill the wishes of his Russian ruler, at least in those areas where they have at least some strategic interests together with the Hungarians, and that's the botched diversification of supply sources. The problem here is that the Hungarians at least have basic diversification, while the Slovaks simply don't have proper diversification, so they are dependent on that pipeline. They rely on the Druzhba pipeline more than the Hungarians. So in this regard, Robert Fico will have to try really hard not to end up completely isolated. It's hard to say whether he'll be more loyal to his Russian overlord, or if even without a change in leadership, he'll himself change his approach a bit toward Hungary, the Czech Republic, Poland, and overall the European Union, Europe, Ukraine, etc. Whether he'll be able to change that without being replaced, or if in Slovakia we'll have to wait for elections and a change in leadership. In any case, right now there's enormous pressure on Slovakia from both sides, because Hungary has changed, we're adaptable, the Poles will push hard, and on the other hand, the Russians will now launch a massive, intense campaign in Slovakia, because they've lost a very strong pillar in Europe in the form of Hungary and Orban, so now the Slovaks will be Russia's dark horse. The question is whether someone in Slovakia will get Lavrov's phone number so they can leak information, or if maybe Mr. Makinka will become a prime candidate for leaking information. Declangelo, yeah, that's also quite possible, but I think the more likely and safer candidate is still the Slovak foreign minister. So, and then we also have a statement kind of from Europe. Ursula von der Leyen said, "Today the heart of Europe beats stronger in Hungary," which is true. "I'm looking forward to cooperation for the benefit of a strong, safe, and above all, united Europe." Friedrich Merz, Jesus Christ, the Germans want to unite Europe with the Hungarians. Look where we've ended up. Oh my God, oh my God. Look, in any case, these are the reactions. I would just say that obviously the European conservative right is slowly recovering. In Poland, Karol Nawrocki, a conservative, a right-winger, a hardcore populist, but he doesn't have his head up Russia's ass. In Italy, Meloni, konzervatívní, right-wing, but firmly defending European and transatlantic interests and ties. Sure, she had her head up Trump's ass, but she pulled it out too. And now, Péter Magyar in Hungary, conservative, you could say he's right-wing, although a nationalist and somewhat of a socialist when it comes to the nation. It's hard to categorize, but you could definitely call him a conservative. Again, he doesn't have his head up Russia's ass, not even up Trump's ass. Trump is against him, went against him, and I think that's the direction Europe should be heading in the future. Europe needs a conservative right. Progressive leftists simply can't rule here. Progressive and left-wing politics can't have a monopoly on power here. We need conservative right-wingers, but we need conservative right-wingers who are confident, strong, have vision, have charisma, and whose only achievement isn't just that Donald Trump took a picture with them. We need an authentic conservative right that isn't dependent on whether Donald Trump takes a picture with them or not. Greetings to Mr. Makinka. You do not represent the authentic conservative right. You are simply just pathetic, and we need to root out similar pathetic right-wingers. Putin is already withdrawing. Those right-wingers have already abandoned Putin. Now we still need to knock that damn stupid cognitively challenged Trump out of the right-wingers' heads. And at that moment, Europe's conservative right will finally be great, respectable, and solid again. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your attention. Write in the comments what you think about this, how you perceive Europe, Hungary, or the conservative right. Feel free. All right, see you. See you again sometime in another video or on a stream sometime. Together here with the chat, who of course sends you greetings, we're going to watch the post-election speech of Péter Magyar. That was kind of an introduction to it. We'll see if there's anything in that speech that the reactions here didn't reflect. Because I haven't seen the speech yet, so it's time to take a look at it after we've had such a nice introduction from the political world. So yeah, support the content, like, share, comment, join the streams, become a hero, or a member. Simply put, just be awesome. And see you next time. Let's get to the speech.